Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got another little update on the Cleveland Browns' new stadium saga. I do want to go over this article talking about potentially a different type of stadium, and I do want to make it clear the Browns are not talking about it. This was just something that was proposed, and this goes all the way back to possibly the 70s, maybe the 80s. I did do a video on this a while ago talking about the potential Cleveland Hexatron that was going to be a multi-purpose, potentially like glass-type dome stadium that would have replaced Cleveland Municipal Stadium. And I am going to be reacting to this and talking about, when are the actual renderings coming out on that Brook Park proposal? We saw the initial rendering. I upscaled it a little bit, and it does look interesting, but we've really only gotten the one leaked image, and apparently the Browns were very angry that image leaked. Someone was like, where did you find that, when the person leaked it? So I'm going to be talking about when I think the renderings will come out. I think that image might have been leaked on like May 1st, honestly. It was like a month ago almost. But let's take a look at this. A covered stadium option for the Browns on the lakefront, what we know. The article says Cleveland architect and real estate developer Robert Corna has a lakefront development plan ready to go with a stadium he calls the Hexatron. Create a six-sided stadium that's covered with a glass roof, and the roof would open. The Hexatron design may sound familiar. It was presented in 1985. So it was presented in 85 for the Browns and the Indians to share a stadium. And technically, the Hexatron was ahead of its time. You look at the initial, they're not even renderings, they're just drawings, but it does look like a pretty, not modern stadium, but it looks a lot better than like some of the stadiums that were being built in the 70s, 80s, the dome stadiums, because that stadium would have had glass surrounding it, which would have enabled a lot of natural light to come into it. The idea of a retractable roof in Cleveland is very intriguing. There are problems with retractable roofs nowadays. The question is, how often would they have it open? If you want to take a look at like a similar climate, look at Lucas Oil Stadium. I mean, they only open Lucas Oil Stadium like 2 times, maybe 3 times a year. And I know they're trying to open it more now, because they used to only open it like once a year back 4 or 5 years ago. Now, recently, they're trying to open it more because they realize it's kind of a waste. But, even Indianapolis, if they're only opening their roof 2, 3 times, how many times can Cleveland actually open it? I think Cleveland is a great climate for a retractable roof in general, because September and October, it's great weather for football. And when I mean great weather, I think honestly like mid-50s is good weather for football. The problem with that is because the retractable roof enables you the option to control the climate and make it 72 degrees all the time, you would have to be very lenient with the roof. The roof needs to be open as much as possible if you are going to do a retractable roof in Cleveland. The reason a roof works, as long as you're aggressive with it, to where, let's say the Browns have a Thursday night game, that it's 54 degrees and clear, that roof needs to be open. It needs to be open, but that's a problem to where the fans will be like, no, I want the climate controlled, I want it to be 72 degrees. But this is always something we're going to deal with retractable roofs. I'm not saying the Browns are doing a retractable roof. It looks like they're not going that route. It looks like they're going the route of a very similar design to US Bank Stadium, where half of the roof is not translucent, but the other half is. It's some type of weird scale design that I do like because it's something different. It's basically modeled in part after US Bank Stadium. It's not like the Chiefs' new proposal, which is a fully translucent roof. It's not like the Bears' new proposal. It's not like the Titans' new stadium that they're getting. It's a little bit different from those because those roofs are fully transparent. Part of the roof, I'm guessing, would be blocked off from actually being translucent. But after nearly 40 years, the Hexatron idea is back, but with better lakefront plans. It's about being able to build the Hexatron. You just push it out in the lake about 100 yards with landfill. That's a 2-year project from when they start. Everybody wants to keep the stadium downtown. Once the Hexatron is built, phase 2 of Corna's plan would begin tearing down current Cleveland Browns Stadium and building it up. Yeah, so I guess that's the idea of the Hexatron. And, it's interesting. I was looking on Google Maps, and this was like a month ago I was doing this. Where could the Browns possibly build their stadium in downtown Cleveland? You could make an argument if they wanted a new stadium, and if the Cleveland mayor wanted to play ball and give Haslam money, possibly like a Chicago Bears situation 2.0, where the Bears flirt with a suburb, but then they stay with the lakefront stadium. it does look like they possibly could build a new stadium right next to Cleveland Browns Stadium. Like, there's like a private airport, like right to the northeast of Cleveland Browns Stadium, right along the lake. You could say, well, maybe Haslam could buy that and build, obviously there's a ton of land there. They could really develop it. But the issue with that would be the location. People already complain about the Browns Stadium location. That would actually be a worse location than where their current stadium is. So I highly doubt that would be an option. But when it comes to the Hexatron, this is kind of strange. So the architect says it's a retractable roof stadium. The retractable roof itself would cost $500 million, which is understandable. That's basically, honestly, I would think it would probably cost more for an NFL stadium. A retractable roof is probably about $600 or $700 million. It's more than a translucent roof because it has to work. It has to move and close and open. He says his stadium would cost about $1 billion, roughly $500 million less than what the Browns are reportedly asking to build in Brook Park. So that's just not possible. You're not going to build an NFL stadium, a modern NFL stadium, let alone, with a retractable roof costing $1 billion. That's ridiculous. Think about it. The Bills' new stadium is fully open. It's in a part where you would think, the building costs would be lower, and they're running up on $1.8 billion in terms of their total costs. You're not building a retractable roof NFL stadium for $1 billion unless it's done extremely cheaply. And nowadays, there's no NFL team that would go cheap on a stadium. That's just not going to happen. So if they actually wanted to build a modern Hexatron, it's going to be the exact same price, I would think, as the Brook Park Stadium. It's going to be over $2 billion. Honestly, maybe more, because if it is a retractable roof, again, those normally cost even more than just the translucent roofs because they have to be able to work. So I don't know where they're getting it would cost $1 billion to build a retractable roof stadium. That's not possible. It's just not possible unless you're building the stadium. Think about it for a second. There's an arena going up, and I know it's in Inglewood, California. The building costs are really high, but there's an 18,000-seat arena that costs $2 billion. How are you going to build a 70,000-seat retractable roof stadium for $1 billion? So for half of that, you'd have to do it extremely cheaply, and the Browns would not do that. So when it comes to the idea of a Hexatron, again, it's an interesting proposal if they want to keep it along the lake. You could maybe argue it, but the Browns at this point, it seems like they didn't get the money that they wanted from the city of Cleveland, so they started talking to suburban areas. And right now, I think Brook Park is like the only option. It's just where that land is in relation to the airport. It makes it the perfect area. The article later says that the Browns have to be out of Cleveland Browns Stadium when the lease is up in 2028. Yeah, I don't think that's really a concern. They could extend the lease by a year or two and I don't think really bat an eye and open the new stadium. But the Browns technically are, it seems like, trying to open their new stadium in 2028. At least that's the tentative timeline. If they do decide to do some type of renovation, because remember, we're talking about two different options. This is really a third option, building a new stadium in Cleveland, that really hasn't been discussed because apparently they're not getting the money from Cleveland to be able to do that. And also the land could be a problem. Where are you going to build it? So the two options are build the new stadium in Brook Park or do a $1.2 billion renovation to the current Cleveland Browns Stadium. I do not believe a renovation to Cleveland Browns Stadium would cause the Browns to, well, actually, it might cause the Browns to relocate for a year because they were talking about doing that last year. Remember the rumors that they might play at Ohio Stadium or the Hall of Fame Stadium? I think that's where they would play in Canton if they had to relocate for a year. Because that stadium is very nice. I think it just got renovated. They might be building like a water park right next to it. So yeah, maybe if they do the renovation to Cleveland Browns Stadium, $1.2 billion is no joke. Because the Jaguars is at 1.4 and they're adding a roof and it's totally changing. The difference, however, is when you're talking about a renovation to Cleveland Browns Stadium, so much of it is based on the exterior land that I'm not sure how much they would actually do to the stadium, because that entire sliver of land right next to the lake would be renovated and changed completely. So that's mainly what a Cleveland Browns Stadium renovation would be, and they would not add a roof on it. I honestly think the best possible thing they could do, and this was a rendering back in like 2006, 2007. They had a pretty sweet retractable roof that possibly could have gone on Cleveland Browns Stadium. I don't know how much money it would cost, probably $500-600 million at least. But I think the best scenario would be the Browns doing a Jaguar situation where you add a roof and you renovate the surrounding area. Yes, it would cost a ton, but in terms of that stadium, I don't think that's a bad stadium. It just needs a roof or something, and it also needs an upgrade in terms of the surrounding area, obviously. But again, you're talking about if that costs $2 billion, why not just build a brand new stadium for $400 million more, which would be $2.4 billion, which is what they're talking about in Brook Park. So it is understandable. We'll have to see what ends up happening. I highly doubt any proposal like this would happen. I don't think the numbers are correct. There's no way you could build a retractable roof stadium for $1 billion in the year 2024. It's not possible, especially in the United States. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.